Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pancake Parlay episode 100. I am your host, the Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
I'm good. It's kind of crazy that we've done 100 episodes of the show.
It is pretty crazy. It's like, who knew? Like, we got into the triple digits. That's something. So yeah, in general, I'd like to thank everyone for listening throughout 3 years or so. We have seen in general like an uptick of viewers in the past like year, so that's really good. Gives us more motivation to keep us working and I guess listening to our voices, I guess, and our opinions, which
Yeah,
it's really
especially
weird to
during
think that people value sometimes or like to listen to our opinions.
it is. I mean, especially on the internet, there's and especially now, like every we can actually mention the coronavirus, and I think it is something that you can say. You can say the dreaded word now, but we'll keep it to a minimum.
Thanks, YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like everybody else is I've been seeing like everyone's making their own podcast because everybody's stuck.
Well, everyone's going to
Um,
entertain themselves, and I think everyone has an opinion. But now, since like no one
exactly.
can walk around and go to your mate's place, or like I don't know, like at work, being like, "Oh, did you watch this new TV show or new movie?" You
Hmm.
can't do that. The only way to do that is literally voicing it online. So I feel
Well,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
and exactly. So like the kind of interaction with people and like audiences now is kind of moving towards a digital space, and that actually kind of leads us into the first story that I had prepared because I was mentioning 2 weeks ago that or a couple of weeks ago, I'm not too sure when, but Trolls 2 or Trolls World Tour made about like $100 million, I believe, in rental fees in the last like 3 weeks since its like official release. Now, this movie was initially supposed to have like a simultaneous digital release and theatrical release, but because of COVID-19 and everything, they kind of just stuck to the digital release, and it's been doing really well. It made $100 million, which is apparently like it's like way larger in profits than the first movie. I'm not too sure by how much, but it did like significantly more, which is kind of crazy. And look, in a way, I think I mentioned this last time. Like part of that reason is because there's more people at home. Um, there's going to be more eyeballs. There's a lot more kids to entertain. So like if Trolls is available, all right, we'll get Trolls. And to be fair, like Trolls was doing really well, like in its demographic and having a lot of downloads and people purchasing quote unquote like rentals of the movie, and then it was number one. But then when Sonic came out, like Sonic's now number one, because people want to watch that movie. Which,
because it's
by the
gonna
way,
go
if you guys,
fast.
yeah, exactly. And by the way, if people haven't watched the new Sonic movie, you have to. It's a really good movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I totally agree. But yeah,
yeah.
and it's one of those things as well where it's like even like with Trolls 2 coming out, I'm assuming they put some money in some sort of marketing campaign, be like, oh yeah, Trolls 2 is out for like video on demand or whatever it is. Because like,
Mm.
how would parents know that like, oh yeah, this movie's coming out? And I think it's kind of showing the new model kind of maybe moving forward. And it's just yeah, it's very interesting how that's working because especially
Well,
with you're competing against old media, but as well as like for example, like Netflix, for example, like at any
mhm.
point, like you could, if you're a parent, you could be like, oh yeah, just watch some animated thing on like Netflix, but to like physically be like, you know what, I'm gonna like rent this thing digitally, out of my
Well, you see,
way to do it.
well,
It's very different. It's very unique.
and here's the thing. It's like what I was saying last time. I think last week I was mentioning how, oh, this is completely normal that everybody's moving away from watching things in a cinema because watching things in a cinema is a very, very outdated and archaic concept. Because let's do an experiment right now. Why did people watch movies in a large gathering?
I think if anything, if you think about it, I think isn't it because like the technology was relatively expensive. It had to be for one particular area because not everyone had a TV. Like no one had TVs, and then it's like
Mhm.
when the TV got introduced, that's when they started to have different TV shows. But that's when the technology of replicating a screen was just so much. You could
Well,
have
you
the
see,
cinema at home.
well, here's the thing. It's not necessarily the screen, but it's like film reel, right? Like not everybody was able to have like the traditional kind of film and like projector tech that they had back then, because like you said, it would have been really expensive. Like, the rich of the rich would be able to, but not like your everyday layman. So what was the best way to watch these shows is you watch it in a large gathering and you project it on a giant ass screen and you watch it, right? That's the reason why going to the movies was like a social experience. But over time, it's just something that's consistently been a part of human culture to go watch a movie with like multiple people. But watching a movie isn't actually a social thing at all. And I think that's what this is showing, that people would much rather just enjoy consuming things at home. Maybe you'll watch it like, that's the kind of good thing with something like Netflix Party and all these kind of social apps kind of allow people to watch things in a group. Is that you can still have that kind of water cooler talk, but you don't have to have it in like a really like a traditional way, And look, I know, like, you even said 2 weeks ago that, like, you like that cinema experience, but I think in the end, like, people prefer convenience over I guess the traditional movie experience. I don't know. Certain movies, like, what was that movie that came out, like, Quiet Place? Like, that movie was really fun to watch in a movie because everybody was for that.
Yeah, and I think certain
But I think that's
films,
very rare.
yeah, I think certain films like utilize, I guess, the cinema space, and makes it more of an experience. I think there are certain films out there that do. I'd say 80%, maybe 90% of them don't. Like I think I mentioned before, it's like you don't watch Nolan's Dunkirk on like on a tablet screen, for example. You want like the best screen possible, best sound possible for like
But
for things
hey,
to feel the experience a lot more
here's
in
here's the
particular.
thing. Here's the thing. The more we're gonna be able to have access to, like, that kind of general tech at home, like when everybody has 4K, 8K, 12K. I don't know what happens. 16K. Who knows? TVs. They're gonna have access to better tech to watch things, and it'll always be some other thing. Oh, you're gonna watch something on a 24 or 32K tech. But we won't have access to that at home, so therefore you're not getting the best experience. In the end, like, I'm not a big fan of like watching movies in chunks, but some people do that. Um,
Have
like,
intermission. You're like, you know what?
well, I
Halfway.
mean, well, I mean that. Look, I have commitment issues when it comes to movies, right? Like, I need to watch like the entire movie, and therefore, like, sitting down and watching something for 2.5 hours like kind of puts me off sometimes. But then I'll watch like 10 episodes of an anime, because I can do that. There's a break period. I can go do things in between. I think that's what the real thing. But because of Universal's move to, make Trolls 2 digital. AMC, which obviously our American viewers will know this, but for everyone else, AMC is basically like a theatrical, uh, like
Theater
cinema
chain.
company, right? Yeah, theater chain. And they have basically said that it will no longer play Universal Studio films at their theaters, because they like, the main reason seems to be that, because Trolls World Tour or something, AMC believes that, because they released this in a digital space, it went against and was breaking their business model and their dealings between the two companies, between um, Universal Studios and AMC. So they're no longer going to have movies played at their cinemas, which seems so petty to me. Like,
Well,
I totally get
even
it.
then, like we don't know if this film to begin with was going to be as successful. Like the first thing is we don't know if it was just the right place at the right time to release it digitally and it made that much
Mhm.
money. It's one of those, I don't, in the law wise, it's like it's kind of one of those things where it's like, can you predict what the opening was going to be beforehand and then use those as projections? If it's lower than what it grossed, then maybe they've got like they don't have a case. But if it's bigger, so that's why it kind of comes back to this
Yeah,
in a
yeah, it can
law
go either
sense
way.
of like how much money can they actually claim of what they've lost. um
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and even
exactly.
then, I personally think it's, yeah, once again, very petty, especially since like a lot of the, I guess, news in the past like month has been like AMC theaters is probably not going to be to last the virus situation, and and all this type of thing. If anything, it's AMC's move to lose, and I think it's just them being like scrambling to be like, we have no money. This is the only way we're going to make money.
Look,
And I can clearly see this backfiring because Universal movies, they might not make like, they might not have a lot of them. Like, obviously they have a lot of stuff. Obviously the Fast and Furious franchise makes like always basically $1 billion, but like
mm,
if you take in consideration, like, what if, because Disney Plus exists, what if Disney started to do it now? Is AMC going to be
yeah.
like, you know what, we're going to also ban Disney films? I doubt
Mm.
that would happen, and that's
Well,
why
well,
it's AMC's bluff will lose.
here's the thing. I see like AMC and Regal and all these other theater companies. They're the middlemen, right? They're gatekeepers in keeping I guess consumers from watching certain content. Um, in their like they like people need to go to these cinemas to watch these content, and movie makers have to use Regal or have their own kind of theater like Netflix has, in order to show movies to the general populace, right? But without them, what would happen? It would just be a direct kind of experience between consumers and retailers, and that's probably the bigger concern. This is much like how like E3 and all these other kind of big gaming shows that are coming out. Like they need companies to come to those shows. Otherwise, there's nothing to for them to do. They're just one big advertising platform where people just sell anime and sell toys and shit to people. In the end, these kind of big conventions don't really mean shit without these big companies going to it, and it's much of the same thing. um, you know, AMC needs Paramount, it needs Disney, it needs all these other Warner Brothers. It needs everyone to come here in order to show their films. And look, in the end, like yeah, like you said, this was a risk for them. But I think in the end, like it paid off. We'll see whether whether it will be replicated. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think one of the big things that I don't like is people like in industry there being uh being like kind of aspects of certain industries having a monopoly because they end up taking advantage of consumers, and it becomes anti-consumer. They'll have a lot of measures that will be at the disadvantage of people trying to consume said product. And AMC will just have to adapt to the new environment, and it's going to be interesting because I mean, once again, things aren't going to be the same until we more or less have a vaccine. And then even after that, is there going to be a big social kind of desire to go to the theaters to watch movies? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Um,
I think even people were thinking that, like, yeah, obviously if we're still gonna do the distancing, basically your audience is gonna be half, so you got to think about, half the audience being in, so half the ticket revenue sales on top of that, and then even then, like, a lot of the movies, they've been pushed back until the end of the year, so like, and even the weird thing is, like, Christopher Nolan's new film is not even moved back yet, so everyone's like questioning that
mhm.
as well. Like, that's until like June, but we'll see what goes on, because I think a lot of these studios are thinking like, do we need the cinema? I think that's the question now that they're probably thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, in the end, there has to be a like. The thing is, it's different for something animated, right? Because in the end, like, the budget is usually not as high. But I think like there is like a potential for them to kind of recoup losses that they may lose from traditionally having it in a digital format as opposed to going into the theaters. Because even Warner Media are rethinking their theatrical model, and they might be releasing, I think it's called Scoob. That's a new um, movie that's coming out centered around like Scooby Doo or whatever. That was originally going to come out in the theaters, but now they're thinking, well, hey, maybe we might just have a video on demand for like $20, and then oh yeah here, and then for the digital purchases for 25. So like that might be worth people to just be like, oh hey, yeah, maybe I'll just have a one-time watch of this movie and just pay $20, or I can just own it for an extra $5. Like that might be something that people are now considering. Oh hey, like that might be something cool to do, and they
Yeah, and
might be
I
able to
think and
just
I think when everything when things get back to normal, it's going to be that shift where is there going to be? I'm pretty sure there's still going to be a hardcore audience. There's that audiences that still go to the cinema, but I think there's also going to be a segment of people who got used to just renting things, just at
Yep.
home. So I think
Hmm.
there's going to be a shift at some point where it's like there's going to be people who want the old way, and then the people are going to be like, you know what, I like the new way. So there's going to be a split.
Hmm. Definitely. And I mean, we're already seeing that with how some companies are kind of releasing things online. Like, I mentioned I think last week or whatever, that DC was going to be introducing its first, like, well, they were talking about how they wanted to do digital comic release in order to kind of supplement the lack of physical releases of comics. And we've actually had our first couple of comics come out. There were a few I've read. I've read a couple of them. Batman Gotham Knights issue 1, Superman Man of Tomorrow issue 1, Wonder Woman Agent of Peace, The Flash Fastest Man Alive, Swamp Thing New Roots, and Aquaman Deep Dives. These are the ones that have come out so far. And these are just like some really kind of good they're not retellings, but they're like a good snapshot into a typical story that these characters are going to be dealing with in their kind of superhero careers. It's very easy. It's a very good jumping point for people who are like new comic book readers, right? And this isn't technically even DC's reboot of the stuff. It's just, hey, here's some comics. It's coming out digital. It's something cool to read, and I've been enjoying my time reading um, these comics so far. They had like the second issue of Batman Gotham Knights come out recently, which I thought was really cool. But you see, like even in the digital comics has been something that, like, we talked about it before, how it's very difficult for companies to, I guess, make money through if comic companies to make money through a digital comic um, revenue stream, because not a lot of people do it.
Yeah,
So I'm not really
and
too
that's the
sure.
crazy part. The audience isn't there, but it's like they're direct to the consumer. As we were talking
Mm,
about before, the comic book store is technically the middleman to the cinema. Like,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
but for some reason it still hasn't translated to that
I think
that digital phase. So I feel like it's
I think it's
almost
because
like there are people that still like their physical media.
comics are so niche. It doesn't have like, Western comics don't have the same kind of cultural appeal like how Japan has with manga, right? Like manga is very common for people to read manga in Japan, to the point that people even like read manga more than watch anime. Like that's like, it's like almost like kind of flipped here in the West, where there's more people watching anime than reading manga. So ultimately, it really comes down to like a social desire for these certain things. And the thing is, in the end, like Western audiences, like we're seeing like Marvel, their comic division is not doing too well. Like it's the same with comics, well, like everywhere, to be fair. But you'd think that like Marvel, which has like the most popular comic book cinematic franchise, would be able to translate their ideas across from like the big screen to the comics and have that consistently sell really well, but they're not even doing that either. And in the end, like I think, you know like Marvel is Disney is keeping like the Marvel comics around to kind of be like an idea source, right? Like they're gonna borrow certain stories from it and then implement it. Like for example, like in the new Bucky and Captain Falcon TV series, it's gonna end up with what is it, like the Falcon Captain America character, and that was introduced only relatively recently in the comics before they had to revert back to tradition. Because I think like Captain America became like a Nazi or something. It was really dumb.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I
but
remember there was a lot of backlash, but I think to your point, it's like they kind of see these I guess the original comic books as kind of like good idea factories and kind of keeping the IP
mhm.
alive for different
Yeah,
stories to
exactly.
happen. And we've all seen what happens when, like, I don't know, people go off base of like the original content or ideas. For example, we can see Game of Thrones in the
Hmm.
last 2 seasons, where if they don't have material to go from, the end result can be. So with these comic books, movies if they have all these comic book movies are more or less based in an idea that was based in a comic book, and they make it different. So I do wonder if they make an original movie plot and how that would be, and how people would receive it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we're seeing that more and more certain comic book movies that are coming out. Like this is also on the list. But X-Men, Dark Phoenix was the biggest box office bomb of 2019. It lost more than 100 million. I think it lost 133 million total. Because let's see, it made a loss of 133 million after topping out at 252 million at the global box office.
And I was one of
So
those people.
yeah, and here's the thing, it like it was the worst, so 133 million, and then next up was Terminator Dark Fate, which lost 122 million, Cats, which lost 113 million, and then Gemini Man lost 111 million.
Man,
So
2019 was the year of the bomb. Like, I swear.
yeah, like there's a lot of bad films. Like I think, look, we even said like there's just a lot of bad things that came out in 2019. It just didn't feel like, I mean, look, I'm saying this very retroactively because there's not going to be any movies coming out in
Yeah,
2020.
like I said, the Academy Award for the Best Picture 2020 is going to be Sonic the Hedgehog. So
yeah, there's going to be like one or two like competing in every category. It'll be hilarious just to see what it looks like. But realistically, like, it just goes to show that having a vision for something is far more important than having just like a brand name on top. And I think that was like the problem with the X-Men, like the new X-Men franchise movies, I guess. Like I think like it peaked at Days of Future Past and then it just like kind of dipped everything forward. But they were just like, oh well, what if we just adapt the Apocalypse storyline, or what if we just adapt the Dark Phoenix storyline? But it's like it's just all um, a surface level, just
I
trying to like kind of I guess like cash in on the brand recognition
mm,
versus actually just making a good film.
that is true, and I also do think audiences maybe got old of it. I think because like A Days of Future Past came out in 2014, and to me, 2014 was the year where Marvel like Studios made the like that was for me personally that was the end of where I say like MCU did really good. Like I love Guardians of the Galaxy and I love Winter Soldier. To me, that's where the MCU peaked for me. But I do know that's when 2014 was also the year then the MCU also I'd probably say gained mass appeal. I'd say because after the first Avengers in 2012, and then all the rest of the sequels came out. I think 2014 was the year where like if you weren't brand like everyone knew what a kind of everyone was getting more known into like what the MCU was, and I think that's where you see that grow, and that's why everyone's like, oh wait, you're telling me there's more superhero stuff that has more things going towards it than like the
Mm.
X-Men franchise, and that's why for me I see like a clear dip as well of the interest of X-Men properties from that point
Well,
in 2014. That's I also see that as well.
we'll
Because
we'll see, because I think like one of the big cards that Marvel needs to consider playing is the fact that, hey, we have X-Men in our back pocket and it might play a big role, because there was all these rumors. I'm just gonna throw out right now because this is actually gonna be a very like rumor filled um episode anyways. But apparently there's like the new Black Panther movie is gonna have like a interaction with Atlantis, and I forget the
is
equivalent.
it
There's like an
Namor? I think
Namor. Yeah, I was gonna call it Aquaman, but yeah, like the Namor.
it's basically Aquaman.
He's basically Aquaman. He's kind of like a cross between like um Aquaman and Black Adam. That's what I would like say. Like he's got like the personality of Black Adam, but his character and like abilities, quote unquote, is like the same as Aquaman, so to speak. To be fair, I haven't read comics by him, but like I'm assuming that's what he's like. Um, and the thing is, uh, there's like that's gonna be like the introduction to him, but that character is a mutant. So it's gonna be very interesting to see. Well, is that going to be their soft way of introducing mutants into the cinematic universe, or are they going to come in like a little bit before? Are they going to be like the main story crux, because it kind of makes sense, because there was a brief period where they had Avengers versus X-Men, so that could be a storyline that can come down the line if they will if Feige is able to plan like this next phase properly. But I don't know what the phase would be about. Like what is
Well,
like
I think this most recent one feels like it's kind of a nothing phase. I think it's obviously setting up to whatever the next thing's going to be, which is probably building up something like the Fantastic Four and
no.
or
Well,
X Men.
here's the thing. The Fantastic Four, like if that's what it builds up to be, it makes sense that that could be the case, because it would just mean that the big bad might be Galactus, right? Like that's going to be the big universe shattering event that kind of unites
But before
everybody together.
Galactus, they fight with the X Men. Like that's their civil war, and
Mm-hmm.
then they all
Correct.
resolve their differences and they fight Galactus. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, correct. That's it. That's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be the end game. End game 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Pretty much, and I think I guess the whole thing of this is it has to keep a lot of people's interest. Because I think you know, with something like Robert Downey Jr. and a lot of the older cast maybe going away, it's one of those things where it's just keeping interest on the storyline. I think there still is a lot of people out there where they're just like, you know what, I'm kind of done. Like it's gonna be called the Infinity War saga. That to me is the MCU, and I think like moving on to the next 10 to 12 years, we'll see how this progresses, because like it depends on where they put their chips in, what characters. Because remember, like they also announced stuff like, you know, like that. I feel like this is more kind of like their B tier, but they have to introduce the X-Men, because that X-Men is like A tier. But you know, they've got stuff like Blade, and then there's also I think rumors that maybe they'll introduce something like the Thunderbolts team, which is like Red Hulk and Ghost Rider, and things like that as well. So it'd be very like interesting, and it'd be a different take. But I don't know if if the MCU wants to do a thing where they just want to have a general audience
Well,
appeal that they've always had.
they're having like the She-Hulk movie, and that's how the She-Hulk movie or a series something.
It's
And I
something.
think that's how well, the main thing I say that is that's how they're getting around the whole like, oh well, we can't have a Hulk movie, but we can have a She-Hulk movie, and it can be about like Bruce can be in it, and then also it can be about whatever the Red Hulk character as well. I forget the name of it, but that was like a mystery. It's like, who is the Red Hulk? Which I think could be pretty cool. Also, Venom got its sequel. That's and it's called like Maximum Carnage or Let There Be Carnage. It's
Okay
like
then, like
it sounds exactly like something straight out of the fucking 90s,
like I said,
or 80s.
like we've said, like with the original Venom, it looks like a movie from the mid 2000s, like a comic book film from the mid 2000s, like Elektra and Daredevil.
Mhm.
It has that same vibe,
Yeah.
and it like I don't know, like as a like we've talked about it before. Where it's like it's the whole Spider-Man thing is owned by Sony still. They're playing
Mhm.
ball with Marvel, but
For
still
now,
they've
yeah.
still I think they've got some sort of control. And I think might have seen some rumors of like the original writer of like Spider-Man Homecoming. He just I think probably about a week ago he just like wrote like a random tweet out of nowhere that just said creative differences, and I think he was probably scripting the new Spider-Man film, and he probably is left or is not doing it because of creative differences. Now that's just a very big speculative rumor, but it's one of
Mm.
those things where it's like clearly the guy who's originally writing something is not happy of where Spider-Man's going. So I don't know what their whole plan, because Spider-Man is their basically their Batman in the sense of that still the most iconic Marvel character that they have, and they need to kind of treat him with respect, almost like I feel like he should be like an independent thing, and he should have his own world and own villains. And yeah, I don't know, because like you got to remember this is also linked to what's the other one, Mobius, and
Yeah.
what the hell was this film?
Look. To be fair, I think the biggest mistake of the film, the biggest mistake is that they're doing a sequel. Because, fuck me, people are fucking stupid. Like, I can't believe Venom did well enough to justify a sequel. But the second biggest mistake is not calling this Venom Maximum Cut, because that's like an actual like comic book name, and rolls off the tongue very well. But they're just calling it that, and I think it's going to be bad. Plus, it's going to be delayed till 2020 anyway. So, we'll have to wait for our Venom fix. and Mobius fix. See what the villain cinematic universe. And the weird thing is, there's technically like two villain cinematic universe, right? Because you have like the villains from Spider-Man joining up, right? You got like the Vulture and
Didn't they set it? Yeah, they set it up with the that other Spider-Man film where it's like I don't
the
know,
first
like
one.
aren't the animals or like Scorpion or whatever, what the hell, whatever it was.
Was
I don't know.
Was Scorpion in one of them?
It's like you remember in the first movie how they broke out those prisoners and there's like that kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
and then apparently I because I don't know my Spider-Man lore, but he's like everyone's like speculating he was going to be like a bad guy in the future. So, but I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Like it makes sense that like in the Marvel universe Spider-Man movies, they have like the Vulture, they have Mysterio. Like you could have like a bunch of other people that Spider-Man could like meet up or whatever in between, and then it makes sense that their villain, like his villain, like I guess I forget what you call them, like like kind of hierarchy of people would go after him. But then like you also have these weird like Sony Spider-Man people who also want to kind of come in, like Mobius, who Spider-Man's never interacted with, and Venom, who he's also not interacted with. It's just weird. Like I don't know how they do it. But going forward, I guess we just have to see what Marvel decides to do. Um, but it's going to be weird regardless. I onto video games. Oh no, Star Wars news. Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 5 have both been dropped for support by EA, round about
About
like the
time.
same time. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a slow death for Battlefield 5, because I think it's just been bleeding um, players ever since its release. And I think like it originally happened with that like initial video that came out, which was like, oh look, it's like a fun, happy game where people are like cyborgs and they have like cricket bats and all that stuff. Like I don't think, look, honest, I can't say this isn't the case. I haven't played Battlefield 5. So I can't say that this isn't the case, but I don't remember going forward in the game that these components like being like a fucking android and and having like a robot limb and like hitting people with cricket bats, like any of that ended up making it into the actual final game, even as a form of um I guess like cosmetic in an in-game DLC pit, right?
Because I
um
do I did play the game at PAX and I'm just like, yeah, this is not a good game. Like, because me and my friends were big Battlefield fans.
mhm.
And like Battlefield 1 was pretty fun because it's like World War I. It's very different. Like you do have like the shovel that you can kill people with, and like the sniper scope isn't that great, but and you have horses on right and then swords. So it's a very different thing. And you got mustard gas. It's a very unique thing. But having a World War II shooter, it was just very generic. And yeah, all that other stuff of like this is not 100% like World War II, and
Mhm.
it tried to have a take on it. The mechanics weren't fun. It wasn't what we wanted, and I think a lot of Battlefield people like me, we want just like apparently the rumored thing is, yeah, we're going to be moving back to actually an official Battlefield 5, which is modern day. So you got your parachutes, you got your C4, and that's what I think people want. I think we're back into that, especially with with Call of Duty basically taking that space again. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people want modern combat back
Modern
again.
shooters again. Yeah. Look, my thing with Battlefield 5 is like they just presented it with they kind of wanted to make like an alternate reality shooter, like in like, oh, it's like a World War II, but it's not because people are different. But then in the end it didn't end up being it like anything like the first trailer that came out. And I think the following trailer, they basically like it looked like a totally different game in the sense that it just looked like a World War II shooter, like with a battlefield, like coat of paint and like pizzazz in it. But it completely was different than the original game that they showed, and I think it lost a lot of consumer confidence, and then people didn't buy it. And then even when it did get released, it didn't even come with the battle royale game that they promised either. It was supposed to come with the, I think it's called like Firestorm, which was like basically their equivalent of a battle royale. Like instead of I don't know, like a fucking electrical field killing everyone. It's like a giant fire that you have to escape and get to the center. It's the same bullshit. But it just wasn't able. Like it came late, and I think like they were just bleeding players. And it didn't justify any continued support of the game. It's no
I'm
different
surprised it
to.
lasted this long because I totally forgot about Battlefield 5 or V, whatever it's called. Like I totally forgot about it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's like I mentioned, it's not the only game. Like, Battlefront is also losing its support. And the thing is, the difference here is like, apparently, from what I understand, like Battlefront 2, um, actually got better, over time because it got into a lot of mainstream light because they were monetizing it like crazy, and making it super difficult to get unlocks, and they rolled back all those, um, you know. You know, I guess changes to make it so. Well, they rolled it back, all these like anti-consumer shit, and then made it easier to unlock stuff. And then they added all this like free content. But they said like, hey, we're finally finished. We're not going to add any more stuff, which obviously made people sad. But I think it kind of makes sense. Like I think that it's no longer like a continued revenue stream anymore, right? Like all these other games, like I've been playing Call of Duty Warzone, and it's a pretty tight game. I feel like it's pretty quality. Like, look, to be fair, I'm not very hardcore with like PUBG and stuff like that, but I think it does a very good job at like kind of at least emulating games like that, but then also allowing it to have its own kind of unique spin, um, and at the same time also be free. That's the big thing. People, it's more easier to have like a constant revenue stream for a game like these because you're able to kind of get people to buy like those the battle pass, because people think, oh well, it's $15. It's not that. Oh, it's
Yeah,
$15 a month. Oh, it's $15 the next month. Oh, it's not that much. But the next minute you've already paid for the game like 5 times over if you're like playing it long term over like a year or.
yeah. I think that's that as we were talking a few weeks ago. That's kind of like the model that everyone's kind of adapted towards. It's not only like a more sustainable model, I guess, for ongoing support for games, especially it pretty much only works for multiplayer games because obviously you want the new season, you want the new packs. Um, but yeah, it seems to be probably the best way possible for things because it is free. If you don't care, you can still play it, and the game is still busy. People still playing it because a lot of the majority of the times of why multiplayer games die is because of competition, and then people leaving to one game to another game. And if it's free, then you always have generally a high capacity for a player base, and to at least keep it for longer. Because as far as I know, even what is it, Rainbow Six Siege, that came out like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's
Mhm.
still getting played pretty highly. And it's still got a hardcore dedicated player base. So yeah, I think that's where
Is
it's kind of moving.
is Anthem EA, or am I just
Anthem
getting
is
mixed?
BioWare, which is owned by EA, and
Okay.
apparently they had original plans for a thing. They completely scrapped that, and now they're working on
Yeah.
something else completely. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. I have Anthem. I remember buying it last year sometime for like,
Before
but I bought it for,
before.
I literally bought it for $15. At some point, I will
Yeah,
play
but
it.
that's $15 too much, man.
I don't know.
That's
I
like,
don't know. Who knows? It could be better. Either way, I didn't. I never got sucked into things
oh,
like Destiny. Like that was never my thing.
actually, speaking of actually a game that you have been sucked into, have you played the new Fallout 76 expansion?
No, no. I
No.
think I pretty much done with Fallout 76 as far as
But it's
I'm
but it's
concerned.
free. It's new content. They've got NPCs now, bro.
It's the thing that people. It's the thing that people wanted originally.
Oh man, like I don't know. Apparently, it's I've like community said it's okay. Like
I don't
you
know.
shoot the guy and
I
like
don't know. Who knows?
that.
I
um,
played. I already played a lot of hours onto it. I don't know. Like it was one of those things where I just had fun with friends building a base and then like I don't know, blowing
fucking
up other
shit up.
people's bases. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Like that
I mean,
that
I
that
mean
that,
that's
that was the fun.
and this is the thing. People can now do that, um, and they can do that for free now. And you got your Fortnites, you got that, but now you're having like something like Call of Duty Warzone. is doing that, you know, and Modern Warfare, even Modern Warfare, like it still amazes me to this day that Call of Duty Modern Warfare that came out last year is the best Call of Duty game of this decade. It's crazy that it's one taking so long, but two that they just needed one game and everybody back on it and everybody's like loving it and they're spending time playing it. Obviously, these games all have their balance problems or whatever, but for the most part, people are really enjoying those games. It's got the brand awareness and stuff, but I think ultimately it's got like a game that people have been wanting to play, and so people are going back and play. Even I was considering purchasing like the main game for it, but then Warzone came. Okay, cool, I can just Warzone, and that I'll be satisfied with that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I think all these video game, like EA and all of their competitors need to have a watch out on how you're supposed to properly monetize these kind of games and how you need to support these games to keep it alive. Like look at Anthem, like that game is not getting support. Like I think people were even mocking it that they still had like Christmas decorations up.
Yeah, like I think like early Feb
January.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And people were just like, what the fuck? Like changes. Like at least try to pretend that you care about the game, you know?
My whole thing, and it always comes back to, it's just I just feel sorry for BioWare, but I think all the talented people from BioWare like left ages ago,
Left, yeah.
and they're doing their own thing. But yeah, it's like BioWare is a shell of itself, which is a real shame because BioWare technically and EA has the license to the Mass Effect IP as well as like Dragon Age. Now a lot of these are like like I would say Mass Effect is very generic sci-fi and Dragon Age is
Well, I
very
mean,
generic fantasy, but I still feel like there is something there that now it's just one of those franchises that's kind of like dead, like Dead Space. That is also an EA thing.
well, speaking of Dead Space and also Mass Effect derivatives, Star Wars has been like all over the news. It continues to be in the news despite how bad Episode 9 is. But the first one that
Despite nothing new aside from Clone Wars and no one else knowing what's going on.
yeah, well, Mandalorian leaked, not leaked. I think they released the episode names, which seem pretty interesting, but there's no like further detail about like what's going to happen. But the first bit of controversy is that Disney put out like a tweet recently about celebrating May the 4th, right? And here's the tweet. So they said, celebrate the saga. Reply with your favorite hashtag Star Wars memory, and you may see it somewhere special on May the 4th. And underneath that tweet, they said, by sharing your message with us using hashtag May the 4th, you agree to use the message for your account in all media in the term of service, which is under Disney, right? So essentially, they're saying that if you use this, Disney basically has legal claim to your tweet if you tweet using the hashtag. And yeah, like they put out a massive like I think it's like a patent for it as well or something. Like they basically have an end users license agreement for May the 4th, right? So obviously people are kind of really ticked off because they're like, well, how are they able to get
Monetize the day.
well, not monitor. Well, they are able to
It's free
make
advertisement
comments.
basically. They're getting the influencer
Twitter,
thing where
Twitter, Twitter in general is free advertising. It's mostly bots, and like even Jack Dorsey admitted like he knows that a large contingent of Twitter is bots, and it's just these companies just and retweeting each other and artificially inflating it and making it look like things are more important than they actually are.
so every time you
Um,
see a trending hashtag, maybe don't believe it all.
no, not at all, because it happens all the time where things will trend, and it's like 2,000 tweets, right? Whereas things that are technically trending and getting a lot of retweets and a lot of likes and a lot of um, eyeballs on it don't end up on that the trending list. And the main reason is because Twitter ultimately are able to control what is visible to the general audience. If they don't like something, it's not going to end up on the trending lists. So always you need to keep an eye out on it. But yeah, it's pretty scummy of Disney to do, but they might be really salty because another thing that came out is nobody is buying Star Wars Episode I guess 7 to 9 toys. We've talked about it before about how merchandise sales are really important for the success of a lot of, I guess, modern day pop culture media, right? And especially Star Wars. And recently, I think it's like Diamond Toy. This toy company in America. I'm not really too sure, but essentially their president was on a podcast, and during the podcast interview, basically said that like nobody is buying these toys. And it's really funny because the interviewer like even like was trying to like reframe the question to be like, oh well, there must be some kind of demand for these toys, um and he just corrected him, and he's like, well, what are you talking about? Like nobody's like uh has these kind of demands. Like where are you getting these very request like where are you getting these sources from? You know, it's crazy, but I'm not surprised because episode 7 through 9 are horrible movies, and nobody the saga finished ages ago. It finished 3 movies ago.
It really died. It really died a long time ago. Like the actual spirit of Star Wars, and even then, like I do remember when Episode 7 was kind of one of those things where it's like that just had the old school hype. Like it had the hype of Star Wars coming back, and that's why you really got to look at the last 2 movies. I feel like to kind of see the impact of what kind of happened. Because obviously a lot of the time when people watch the Force Awakens, it was kind of like a blind buy almost. And I do remember there was so much hype, and they had I think they call it Force Tuesdays or Force Mondays, and it's a marketing day where they reveal all the this is all the new Star Wars toys. You can get them at midnight, and this is like your range, and then basically there's just people that line up for Star Wars toys. That used to be a thing where like and people forget that the original Star Wars kind of invented the whole like tie-in with lunch boxes and toys and things like that. A lot of the times movies didn't really do that, and Star Wars invented that. So for a franchise that invented the genre of tying in merchandise with a film to basically be dead when it comes to merchandising with the film, it is really sad to see that it's basically disappeared and no one's really interested in any of these toys. Or on top of that, no one's interested in the new characters either. People still want a Luke from back in the day. People still want like a Boba Fett, because these character designs and the characters themselves are much more interesting than what was presented in the past like 5 years.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like, look, here's some excerpts from the interview. So, Chuck Cheracia, he's the president. He says, "quote I will say from what we've seen, the sales on the products from 7 and 8 were not too strong. I know those movies as well as 9, they're fans, and those fans might say GG, which is like another a toy, I guess, brand name, just never did the right products or characters or formats, and they might be correct. However, we can only go by what we know." So he's like, again, he's just reiterating that the sales for these toys, like nobody was purchasing them. And the thing is, like, like toys are big business, right? Like they like every time like a show or something comes out, they know about like if they're going to make toys about it, they know based on previous data what sells to like younger male and female like children, female, just children in general. But like like the different demographics, like guys want like boys want like toys with articulation and a lot of like kind of movement and accessories that are like for battle and stuff, whereas like the which is completely different to like the accessories for kind of dolls and stuff that girls want to play with. Like they know this because of history of toys, and what sells, and clearly the kind of stuff that they were selling for Star Wars wasn't working. Now the follow-up question by Chris Wyman, who's the interviewer, he says essentially, so that Star Wars hit the cinemas, blah blah blah. I would imagine there was some very requested characters especially in the very popular minibus line that fans would love to see. Names like Emperor Palpatine, Poe Dameron, Zori Bliss, Buku Flake, Lando Calrissian, C-3PO. By the way, who was asking for a Zori Bliss
Remember Zori
cast?
Bliss? Remember how she had like a whole character development summed up in like 20 minutes of screen time? Where she's like, "Oh, I love you, but you betrayed me, and I worked hard, and I want to take care of the people, but I'm gonna leave," and then be like, "You know what? Fuck it, I'll give you the thing that I worked so hard for the greater
Is
good."
that one Zori? Is that one Zori Bliss?
She's the golden
Oh,
helmet
helmet
lady.
person. Oh, you know who I thought it was? I thought it was the woman who
Oh yeah, the
uh
rebel that broke
the
away from
yeah, yeah, the one
stormtroopers. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
even remember her name, but
Oh
that's the
no, no,
thing.
you're correct. That is correct. That is the character. But he goes on to say, can you speak more on when we might see more characters from the final chapter on the nine in the 9 film Star Wars saga? And Chuck responds, as I mentioned, we are working on some, but I have to ask you, are you sure there are a lot of demand for these very requested characters? The overall demand for Bus and Star Wars products is not what it was like was not what it was like 10 or even 5 years ago. So there you go. Like he's kind of just he's just laying his dick out like right in front of this dude and being like, what the fuck are you talking about
I,
these very requested characters? Nobody fucking gives a shit about Zori Bliss. Nobody cares about having a episode 9 Emperor Palpatine. Like who cares? Poe
I think now we're up to that point now where everyone, since the main trilogy, quote unquote, is over, now everyone's like, okay, Star Wars is, yeah, we can kind
Yeah,
of
Star Wars
fully
is
lay,
shit. Yeah.
yeah, we can lay, we kind of could lay on to it now. And I feel like that's kind of what happened. It's like no one wants these characters. Like the only person I would kind of want, because I kind of like, is like Babu Frick, and that's just because it's kind of this little small like character. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of funny. But like for me, like personally, if I was gonna get like a Star Wars toy, I would get like a Boba Fett toy. Or Darth Vader is, or it's an iconic design.
Vader,
Like
yeah.
Ray
Darth
looks Ray,
Maul,
yeah,
or
yeah, Darth
yeah,
Maul. Ray looks whatever. Like Poe looks
generic.
whatever. Like there's nothing, like the designs as well. It's just too generic, and it's too. It
Yeah,
doesn't have.
nobody has like some cool shit, like I don't even know how to describe it. Like they don't have like a metal like jaw or something, like something that kind of makes them different from like a general character.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
they
definitely
don't
right.
have like a defining feature where it's like, oh, you think
A
of
metal arm with
yeah,
a gun at the end.
or
Says Barrett.
even something like, like for example, as simple it is, like Chewbacca, right? His design is very simple, but he has that like utility belt, and that crossbow is like very like, when you think of that crossbow you think of Chewie. Like I
Oh yeah.
like when I think of Poe Dameron, like he's just generic dude. He's trying to be Han Solo. Like he doesn't have a unique
Yeah.
gun. He doesn't like have a unique personality to him as well. So, and I think that's
Hmm.
what happened. It happened. Everything is so much derivative of all the stuff that it doesn't become new
Hmm.
or an interesting take. The only thing that seemed relatively interesting and is technically rip off is probably like something like BB-8, because of its spherical rounded look and how it rolls. It's very different from all the other droids where they're like on wheels, and this is like one big
Yeah,
wheel.
that's true.
That's
That's
the only
true.
one. That's the only one I can think of.
That
Everything
comes to
else is
mind.
very generic.
I guess like I think I'd give what is it, Kylo Ren's
Oh yeah,
lightsaber
yeah.
is pretty. That's about it. That's about it. Everything else like is more or less like a derivative. And to be fair, even Kylo Ren's lightsaber isn't something that's like from a lore perspective that's original, but it is something that's original, like like something that's there that people hadn't seen before on the big screen. So like it's different to something like Darth Maul and the double bladed lightsaber. That's new. That was like that wasn't in like extended Star Wars canon. Like everything kind of like derived from
Like
um
that
going
was like a
forward.
big reveal at that point where it's like,
Yeah.
what, two lightsabers?
What? Yeah, people lost their mind that this is why he was such a popular character, even though he didn't play a huge like role in the movie as a whole.
But that's the
Um,
thing. I think Star Wars really has been good at that, but they've done a lot of retcons. Like for example, Darth Maul,
mhm.
as we've mentioned before, he kind of died, and it was kind of a semi useless character. But in the most recent years, for something like a Clone Wars, and even something like Solo, he's kind of had more of a traction and more of a fan following. But then you can see with the modern Star Wars, you can see like what is it, Captain Phasma, very useless character, pretty much the
Well,
you'd think, oh yeah, they learned from Boba Fett, like,
mm,
okay, do something interesting, but she did nothing. Even like the Knights of Ren, like cool, kind of cool character designs, and and I thought in Rise of Skywalker they're gonna be like, okay, each one has like a different fighting style or like different expertise, but they're all just very
mm,
generic. In the film, they just present as generic, and I'm assuming somewhere in the novels or whatever they are different. But I'm not going to be that interested in expanding it that way.
yeah, exactly. And look, here's the thing. I think a lot of these characters are essentially supposed to be like uninspired derivatives of the like main characters or characters that like had personality in the old films. Like like you said, like Poe Dameron is basically Han Solo. Rey is basically Luke. I don't know. John Boyega's character is, I don't know, Han Solo ish again. What is it? Captain Phasma is supposed to be Boba, right? In the end, this like I mentioned before, and I forget which episode I did it in, but like ages ago, I broke down the reason. I think part of the reason why is because Disney wanted to reestablish like a new Star Wars phase that didn't involve legacy characters, and these characters were then passed off towards the new characters. There's no R2D2, but there's BB-8. There's no Luke. There's Rey, right? And it was all done because the big behind the scenes thing is that they reckon that anything that still used Lucas's original IP, despite Lucas no longer owning the property, he might still retain some kind of revenue split and might still gain funds from using characters like R2D2 or Chewbacca, which is why they didn't want to use Han Solo anymore. They didn't want to use Luke. They didn't want to use Princess Leia, although they were still using Leia towards the end, anyways. But this made a pretty big decision because recently it was kind of revealed that some basically how there was the big Star Wars land at Disney World. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
some of that.
yeah, I saw it and I was very hyped for it at the start. I think that was my thing. I'm like, okay, think of all the possibilities that they could do, have interactive experiences in the Star Wars world. Disney Imagineers are pretty damn good in what they do. Like I don't know if you've been to a lot of the parks, but like even something what they've done with Avatar in
Mm-hmm.
Disney World is quite interesting. And obviously, I think they're planning to do a Marvel one as well in the future.
Okay,
So
yeah,
like,
that makes sense. Yeah.
for me, I'm like, I was like very hyped. But when a lot of the early reviews came in, they're just like, yeah, there's one ride. The rest of it's just like fake food that you have to spend your money on. And the
Mm-hmm.
only things that seemed interesting is you
No.
can make your own droid slash lightsaber. That's to me that seemed to be the only interesting takeaway I got from the modern Star Wars parks.
And here's the thing: it's called Galaxy's Edge. Now, the thing is, Galaxy's Edge, the original plans for it, was supposed to be based on the original trilogy. But
Makes
uh,
marketing sense, profitable sense.
yeah, because why would you base it on the most popular movies of the franchise? Don, like, does that make sense? I don't know. Very weird. But basically, like the release from certain sources were saying that Kathleen Kennedy actually killed it, like the I guess park being based on Tatooine, because that was where it was supposed to be based on. They have like the cantinas, but it's like doesn't play the cantina music. It's playing some other original OC shit that they're trying to get around because they don't want to associate the old movie because they want to inject like this new thing is Star Wars. You have to accept this as Star Wars, and if you don't like it, you're not a real, you know. Um, it's crazy. It's crazy that Kathleen Kennedy, it makes sense for from to be fair, it makes sense for Kathleen Kennedy because she's the producer, like the overlooker of everything happening in Star Wars. And so she's doubling down on anything new. She's like, oh well, if what is it, BB-8? If if that's the new robot, that needs to be everywhere, not R2D2. No, no Boba Fett. It has to be Captain Phasma. It has to be the new kind of stormtroopers, not the old one.
Yeah,
Right?
if we're gonna do a location, it has to be the new locations, and it's like,
And look, it makes complete sense that because one of the areas, I think in Galaxy's Edge or something, like, there's like a whole like experience where you hang out like on a ship that's traveling, and then midway during the trip, Kylo Ren and the stormtroopers like invade your ship. Now, what makes sense? It makes sense that it's Darth Vader coming in with all the stormtroopers like it was in episode 4, right? Like
yeah,
at the beginning of episode 4. It's a recreation of that, and that's what the experience is. But they've obviously had to adapt it and change it because um, because of the decision that was made. Now, his a bit of a quote. Well, yesterday Bob Iger met with Kathleen Kennedy, who, as a lot of people may know, was sort of a George Lucas protege and headed up Lucasfilms. And they had a conversation, they had a meeting, and Kathleen Kennedy, her point of view was there was way more Disney Star Wars stories ahead of us than behind us. So he continues saying, so we really should think about do we want to build Tatooine and build what was a 50s something remember what the 50s somethings remember Star Wars is, or do we want to build something else that is going to appeal to all the upcoming generations who are going to know the new story? Nobody cares about your new fucking stories of Star Wars. Holy shit. Like, I didn't read this. This was just like a section that I just caught my eye reading this article. And holy shit. Like, nobody gives a shit about the new Star Wars. Nobody considers it any good of any quality. And they're continuing to beat a dead horse and try and pull blood out of a fucking stone.
that's
With the franchise.
that's the sad part of it is. It's just like, okay, I can kind of see where she's coming from. She's like, okay, I want to I guess establish something for myself. I want to establish that, like, if we're tied to George Lucas, 100% of the profits go this way. That is a good
Mhm.
intention. However, you needed to the only way to do that is if you literally finish the trilogy, and then you were just like, okay, this is success, let's go for it. I think, as you mentioned before, she doubled down on it 100%. Like, this is going to succeed and this is going to work. We're not going to do it. Like, personally, if I was in charge, I'd be like, okay, we're going to do the original stuff. That has to be done, or really split the park of, like, prequels, original trilogy, and then sequel trilogy, to kind of have like a kind of a phase throughout all the ages, and it'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, this way it's just so stupid because everyone in Star Wars, the 50 something comment is just really, it's just that's still your main fan base, and even if you're not 50, like for me, who's 26, 27, that's the original is still my base, and maybe even the prequels are, because the people who grew up with the prequels like me, they still do those two.
Nah, nah,
So
fuck
like,
you, mate.
yeah, I know, but still, like, the sequels, no one, maybe no one's growing up with them, and like these little kids, we've seen time and time again that kids these days aren't interested in the new Star Wars, or even Star Wars in general. They've kind of killed the golden goose with this attempt to try and fix their version of Star Wars. But we know that the original one stands the test of time because in general they're good films, and that's the one that
Really?
sells. Yeah,
Weird.
it's
Weird.
not about the whole franchise thing, but like,
Ah, that's so weird, man.
but it, but
I don't know. I
it,
don't
yeah,
make films, so what would
yeah.
I know?
What do I know? But still, in the end, I think, because like, if you look, if I was like, Bob Iger or whatever it is, if I look at Kathleen Kennedy's track record, I'd be like, okay, so the Force Awakens made $2 billion. Okay, that was kind of a given. And then the second one, The Last Jedi, the one that broke the camel's back, made basically half of that. So then you're like, okay, there's something going on. And then the third one that doubled down and made even less money than the middle one. So clearly, instead of what you want a trilogy to do and a franchise to do, is go upwards per movie, not downwards. So if I was someone like Bob Iger, I'd be like, look, you're not performing at all to what the expectations were. Merchandise sales are down. No one's watching the movies. No one's interested in all these things. So like, if you were actually a correct boss, you would fire her. However, the problem seems to be, it's just like, she must have dirt on someone, or there's just going to be something going on.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know what? I actually completely agree with you because at least from an industry perspective, there's been a lot of theories about why uh, Kathleen Kennedy is able to kind of get away with all this kind of junk. And there's a lot of backroom talk about like, oh well, maybe it's like it might look bad, like oh if they, because nobody wanted to take the helm. I could try to find someone else to run Star Wars, and nobody wanted to take it. So he was kind of stuck with Ken. And look, we've said it before that like we wouldn't be surprised if later down the line, she's just going to take a sabbatical and be like, oh, well, I'm moving forward and I'm going to spend more time with my kids or whatever it may be in order to kind of be like, it's like a soft firing, right? To be like,
It's on
and
her
this kind,
terms. Yeah.
it's on her terms, but it makes it both of the companies, like both the company and their relationship look good. But I think she wants leverage, and maybe how that might manifest is, how we're seeing it going forward is, the creator of Russian Dolls, Leslie Headland, um, uh, is apparently in the works for a Star Wars series, like an all like a female centric Star Wars series, that's on Disney Plus. Now, the big thing about this particular release or this particular announcement was that it was leaked to Variety, and it didn't come through like traditional Disney channels, right? Because usually when Disney wants to, you see, I didn't put two and two together, but like, because again, I don't do, we talk about the news here, but a lot of the analysis is, we'll leave, like I like to leave it to, quote unquote journalists who actually do the research. But there's a lot of people who kind of looked at this and was like, hey, it's really weird that this kind of news is coming from Variety because usually Disney is very tight-lipped about their projects and what's coming out. And to be fair, Disney's actually been putting things on hold or canceling a lot of their shows.
Yeah, you don't really see
So
anything like anything being newly introduced, especially during the virus times. Like nothing is. No one's like,
yeah,
okay, we're doing this new thing. It's like it's not part of the cycle anymore. The article the websites that do
now
that type of news basically are just saying, is it going to get cancelled or moved? That's their job right now.
exactly. And if something new was coming out, it would be something that would be coming through official channels. Like Star Wars is announcing that they have a new show coming up. But what the Variety article is a bunch of information that's very bare bones. They have like, oh well, Headland is creating it. Details of the exact plot of the series are being kept under wraps, but sources say that it will be a female-centric series that takes place in a different part of the Star Wars timeline than other projects. See, it's so vague. It's like Disney wouldn't Disney wouldn't be putting that kind of information out. They would be far more confident, especially now, um, given like look at the High Republic, right? The High Republic is where Disney's focusing all their new ideas into. It's a period of Star Wars that they haven't explored yet and have with possibility. And if they wanted to do something like this, they would have said like, "Oh, it's set during High Republic." That would have been the smart move to do if this was actually coming out of Disney. Like, oh, it's set in a period of like the height of the Jedi, and it's gonna have all these like characters or something in it. But it seems purposefully vague. And I think it's because this is supposed to be a like a move to try and get Disney to actually make this show, even though because they even say here reps from Disney and Headland did not immediately respond to Variety's request for comment. So this is definitely something that just got leaked. Um, and the thing is, a lot of like traditional leaks that's like not supposed to be coming from like sources within companies don't usually get leaked to Variety. Like they usually go to like smaller places that are like willing to. I mean you've probably seen some of the websites like I like now we got this or these kind of sites are like rumor mill web. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
post a lot of things, and this is where like a lot of places that post a lot of, we're going to talk about a lot more rumors coming up, but like these smaller places get these rumors first, and then they get printed later on in big publications. Like once those publications do the sources, but this is a direct. So there's a lot of talks about how this could be something where like Headland's marketing team leaked it on purpose, or Kathleen Kennedy's marketing team leaked it on purpose, in order to leverage Disney to actually create this under the potential social backlash of if they don't create the show, since it's a very progressive TV series. And that's the thing. It's I don't think Disney will blink at this. I think Disney will be like, no, we're not. Like if they don't have an intention of making this show, they won't make it. It's too much of a risk.
Yeah,
The
especially these days. It's like I think you were about to say, kind of like The Mandalorian is what people want in a TV show, a Star Wars TV show, and it's given them great success. So obviously they're trying their best to probably fill in and pad out, their Disney Plus service. But obviously they want to cater to their main demographic / audience, which is still, as Kathleen Kennedy put it bluntly, the 50-year-olds. And I know they're still trying to carve a path for, I guess, the new ones. And yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to mention, now you've seen Russian Doll. I've been meaning to watch it. Russian Doll is a good series, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really enjoy it. However, I don't like. She's the creator, but I know that it was kind of co-created from the star as well. So it's kind of co-created. Okay. So it's one of those things where it's like, the Benioff and Weiss from like Game of Thrones. I don't know 100% who put what much value into what, because the actress in it, she's like also the writer as well. She was a big actress in the 90s, and I think she was in the Orange and the New Black. She's got all the comedic stuff, which I really liked about Russian Doll, purely came from her. But if we want to look at backstory of like, if it progressive wise, there's nothing to say that Russian Doll has that type of tappings in it. However, when you look at the most recent interviews with her in it, the Highland lady, then you're kind of like, okay, you've probably changed in the past 2 years. So that's where kind of the slant maybe moves towards. Like I enjoyed Russian Doll. And obviously, there's probably a season 2. I think there's a season 2 in the works. They'll probably do something different, and probably everyone hates it. But from my knowledge, like I enjoy it. So that's why I'm very like, I don't know, because she might have changed her mind, or is this one going to finally be one of the cases where her politics might be something that's completely different from what people want, but she's actually good at it. Like she's actually made a good character and made good things. That's what everyone's still waiting for. Where we're just like, make a good character, and it's not just purely about the agenda that you're trying to drive.
Yeah. Well, look, all these like, I guess like it's this big Hollywood push like, a show to be, like a female centric show, but it's very shallow, right? Like we've talked about it before. Like you've watched Terminator Dark Fate. I've seen the new Charlie's Angels film. There's Ghostbusters from 2016. All these films are just superficial and bare bones, and they won't be successful at what they do because they don't, because they tend to these kind of shows tend to either target like the male demographic, or supposed to have a large male demographic viewership for something like Charlie's Angels, and they're not going to be able to grab that quadrant based on just saying that, oh, this is a show that's female centric. Like, that's not going to drive a lot of traffic to it, because
although by the way, that's not even a selling point. Like even you said it's an all male show, okay, like why? Like that's nothing. And, like even framing it as an all female thing is almost putting it as a disingenuous thing of like, it's for a certain amount of people, and if it fails, it kind of gives it the connotation that all female stuff doesn't work. Like exactly. And I think this all drives back to is like, just because you have an idea in mind in the show, like you can be like, Westworld's revolutionary because it played with timelines, doesn't make it a good show. It's like these things where it's like, just because you have a gimmick or something behind it doesn't make it good. The content of it itself has to be good.
Exactly. Like, I mean, look at Wonder Woman. That's like the perfect example of a female-centric show that appealed to both men and women. Um, and yeah, like it paved the way for future like female like movies. I mean, Captain Marvel, I think, was like the next major like female-centric movie that's done really popular. Like, this is like before like Elektra and Catwoman, right? Like, I'm obviously not including those films. Um, and we're coming with the Black Widow film. We're coming out with like Wonder Woman 1984 was supposed to come out. So yeah, like there's a way to produce shows, and I don't think this is how you do it. But I mean, Disney could. I don't think Bob Iger will bite on this particular, um, kind of bait here. Um, but we'll have to see. Like, I mean, in the end, it might be good. Um, but
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know.
that's the thing. Eat my words. Like, please, like, that's what we want. What we want is just good quality stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, to me, the contents of it, it's just good. And I think the problem with modern Hollywood, and you can even see it with the Star Wars trilogy, the new ones, is that it's not character driven, or it has these ideas that are very shallow, and it has a thing that it wants to push over than just being good. I just want to go back to having good things, and not have to worry about, like, okay, we want to push this particular side or view of things. That's what I want. I just want good character. Just give me
Yeah,
good
well,
character.
and it sucks because I've been and I'm thinking of doing a review. I'm thinking of doing like a proper review of like all the Batman comics that I've been reading. Because one of my favorite characters throughout the I guess the New 52 era slash Rebirth era um of the Bat family is Cassandra Cain. I mentioned it before on this show, and I only knew like a bare bones history of her back when I was talking about her. So I was like going on a rant how they ruined her character in the Harley Quinn movie, and I've read like a bunch of comics that involved her now because it's like Batman Eternal, sorry, Batman and Robin Eternal, and then Detective Comics in the Rebirth era involve her, and she's quite contingent, and she has like a very critical role in a lot of stories, and she's really cool, and she's a well-written female character, um, it's like a actions over words kind of thing because she literally doesn't talk that, but that's part of her character, and there's like a justifiable reason of why she's like that. Um, it's excellent, and maybe I'll talk about it in detail, like in a future podcast, about like my review of all the like Batman comics once I like finish them. But there is a way that you can do these things without, um, forfeiting like character development and story. And it sucks because like I guess the final story that we have to talk about today is The Last of Us 2 had a bunch of like I think every story cutscene leaked online. And you know, 2 weeks ago, this was like post show. I was talking to you, Don, about how there was some 4chan rumors about how apparently like the plot will be like a revenge plot against. I guess I should
Like,
preface
be like,
and
if you
say,
really care about
yeah,
spoilers.
if The Last of Us 2, then I guess like I guess you can skip to, I don't know, like maybe 20 minutes. I don't know how long we'll talk about it, but like 20 minutes, just because we're going to be talking a little bit of spoilers that are like at least confirmed for the most part. Like I've seen the videos. They're in German or
They're
but yeah,
German,
like,
so they're real.
well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, like, so we'll be talking about Last of Us 2 spoilers. So yeah, if you're not interested, I'm giving you the due diligence now that we're going to be talking about spoilers now. But yeah, there we go. Spoiler time. So yeah, so last week after the show, I was mentioning about how there were rumors on, I guess there's a lot of places we're talking about how there were like some 4chan rumors about how Last of Us 2 details about how Joel dies and Ellie goes on like a revenge plot against a Christian cult organization that killed him or killed a bunch of like survivors or something, and it's like a big revenge plot. And yeah, like, and so people were like, okay, yeah, all right, well, what does that have to do with like clickers and shit? But I guess we'll do. It's kind of sounding more and more like Walking Dead the more I think of it, right?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's basically The Walking Dead, where it's like the original threat is
human
zombies, but then humans turn on each other since society's collapsed.
humans more scary.
Yeah,
But yeah, the yeah, so a bunch of videos got released, and it basically confirms um a lot of these rumors, including the fact that Joel dies. But then there's the introduction of the antagonist. I think her name's Abby. So it's I think it's like a male to female transgender individual called Abby, who's the daughter of a scientist or a surgeon that Joel kills from the first game, who is like making it her mission to find Joel and kill him. And so halfway into the game, you actually um, play as her, um, and it kind of switches because like again, it's kind of weird because like the whole thing, I thought this game was supposed to be more about like Ellie, um,
yeah. Well,
and not about
I
this
think,
random
yeah,
character.
I think in general, like a lot of people, as we mentioned with the whole Joel situation, even Ellie. So far, the actual official promotion materials that we see, and remember, this game was already supposed to be out by now. It
Hmm.
only just showed like a little bit of Joel and a lot of Ellie. Not the extra character of Ellie or whatever her name is has not been seen at all until these leaks. So clearly
Hmm.
there was an intent not to show it, and even then, but from what I know, a lot of
To
the
be a
time
surprise,
it's to
right?
be a
I'm
surprise. But a lot of
presuming.
people, when you try to sell them on something of like you're going to control this character, and then you're not really going to, I think that pisses people off a lot. It reminds me of even like you can even just go to Last Jedi. Everyone thought, I mean, the Force Awakens. Everyone thought Mark Hamill had did something to do with that movie, and he literally did nothing in that film.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I think a similar now this is a situation where it did work well. I think Metal Gear Solid 2, the beginning of that game, like you think the whole game is about like you playing as Snake, but then they do like a bait and switch and oh no, you're actually playing as Raiden, right? But apparently that was done like really well. People were really pissed initially, but then apparently like it's a concept that's played on that like oh like you're supposed to be Snake, but then you're not, and it's juxtaposed with like a lot of the other kind of concepts that and themes that are explored throughout the game. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be the case here. Like from what I understand, the story is Abby kills Joel and catches Ellie, but then decides like, oh well, Ellie's not responsible for what happened to her dad, so she considers like letting her go. But then Ellie escapes, kills her friends, and so then Abby goes and hunts her down. And ultimately, yeah, like it's crazy. I don't know that they could drop the ball so hard with this game.
I told you, man,
Um,
we accept a mediocrity when it comes to storytelling for a lot of big franchises, and it's like, and I think a lot of it is
we
they get away with it purely because of the companies have a lot of like I guess money to kind of burn, I guess, and that's why this whole interesting thing with the virus thing is that a lot of these businesses will be cutting the fat. If it's not a successful thing, then they will have to work with fans. They won't go to auteurs and be like, craft the story that you want to make or do whatever you want to do. I think they'll play it safe.
yeah
This story is definitely not safe, and I guess yeah, it's just one of those things where it's one of those things where it's like the story. I would say majority of the Last of Us and its appeal is probably the story.
mhm.
And for people to be like, this is the story, and they don't like it because they killed their main characters or that's the story they want to tell. I think that has a lot of implications. Now, I'm assuming Last of Us 2 will probably sell well, no matter what. Like, the normie people who don't know about these leaks will play the game anyways. I'm pretty sure, and it will sell quite well.
Mm.
But we'll maybe see the impact of the hardcore audience. That's the thing.
Well, here's the thing. I think in the end, like The Last of Us, like is supposed to have good word of mouth, right? Like people like the first game, so they're gonna play the second game. This leaked like several. Like, I don't know when the game was officially supposed to release, but it released early, and that's not going to be, uh, you know, that's not going to be sitting right with a lot of people going forward. Because again, story is very important. This is supposed to be like a story-driven game. Obviously it has action in it, but you're supposed to care for the character. And the thing is, Ellie is the character that you're protecting in the first game. It makes sense to kind of kill like Joel, for example, because he's supposed to be like the mentor character, and it's the classic like, oh, the hero, like hero's journey thing where like the mentor dies and then the hero uses it as a motivation
But
to.
if you're trying to subvert expectations, quote unquote, wouldn't you not do that and then maybe even kill Ellie instead? See, it's like
Maybe, yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense. But I think a lot of people would. Oh, so we're playing as Joel again, old
mm.
man Joel.
Joel's cool. Joel's cool.
No,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. I like Joel, but I think the point is that like people want to play as Ellie. Like, oh, like Ellie, she's like a badass now. She's older. She can do cool shit now, and she's not just like someone who needs to be protected or whatever. I think that would be like, it makes for a cool story. There'd be, and then that's the motivation. It's like, hey, getting revenge for like Joel dying and other people dying. Who knows? Don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, like it's a thing that just seems really bizarre because it's a beloved franchise. Sony's been mostly hitting it out of the park with all their kind of next gen sequels. Like, here's the thing: they'll win the next generation cycle if they just keep doing the same thing technically. Um, God of War 2, which is a direct sequel to the last. What's
Horizon
that?
Zero Dawn 2, which is
2.
pretty much being confirmed, like
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
semi
yeah,
leak
yeah.
wise.
Spider-Man 2. Like, just release these games as sequels and just keep true to the story, and you'll just sell heaps of them. But I don't know what's been going on at Naughty Dog. You
From what I've heard is like the original the
talent,
creative
yeah.
director I think Amy Hedwig, and she left. She actually got pushed out of the company by the Neil Druckmann guy, who's the main guy at Naughty Dog these days. Because Amy
Okay.
Hedwig, she kind of left, and she actually did the what is it, Star Wars Fallen Order game. So she moved to EA.
Oh,
And she,
wait. The new game that we both like, that
the
one.
Star Wars Fallen Order that game was directed by the old Naughty Dog creative director. So that's why you can probably see bleeding elements
Oh.
of it, and that's why like there was a structural change when Neil Druckmann became the head of Naughty Dog, and obviously has different ideas. And I think he started with 4. Uncharted 4, and then he moved on obviously to The Last of Us 2. So then you can kind of see a structural kind of change, because even for example like Nathan Drake and his story in 4 was very much different from the Nathan Drake that we got in 1, 2, and 3. So then we've heard a lot of different stories as well, not only just story and creative differences, but as well as not being treating the employees right. Obviously, there's the infamous crunch time that game
Yes.
developers have, but there's a lot of extra stuff of like there's a lot of developers in the studio that don't like the direction of where the story is going, and even just their working hours and how they're getting treated. Remember, this is all leaked from a employee of the company, so they clearly are just not happy with the product.
Yeah, look, they mentioned well, from what I understand, they mentioned that with the reason why all these leaks was because of like a disgruntled employee who apparently they were supposed to be paid and they weren't, and because when they brought it up to head office, they like said no, and they said fuck it, like we're going to leak this. Now, not confirmed that this is the case, but this is what is believed to be the motivation behind why all these leaks occurred, rather than it being like a third party hacker. This happened internally. So someone internally released all this work. Now, the thing is, like, you're seeing a lot of articles on, like, I think like Jason Schreier, mentioned he's like a Polygon writer, or he's like ex Polygon writer now.
I
So I
think he
think
just left Kotaku. I think
right,
he
right.
he
Oh, I
just
think.
left.
Oh, yeah. See, I can't get any of those.
Either way, they're very similar, so it's all good.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, he was saying that. Oh, yeah, they shouldn't be leaking it like that. But like, he's more than happy to talk about leaks
Yeah,
for
because
games when it's
he's
convenient.
the one who leaked the poor working conditions of Naughty
Yeah,
Dog.
yeah, sure.
So it's like
Yeah,
it's like basically I want the scoop, in a sense,
yeah,
or no
yeah,
one
yeah,
else can leak
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, except me, the journalist, quote unquote. But yeah, like that's the thing that I would expect them to say. But that's the thing, like clearly internally, they'll be like, oh, look at all this time, all the hard work that all these game developers had to go through, and now it's all been ruined. Well, yeah, guess what? Like chances are like these people had to go through crunch in order to meet expectation. It's awful. Like I hope like I don't like leaks like this technically either, right? Because obviously, yeah, it does hurt the industry, but like clearly, if there's some kind of bad practices going on, then I'm more than happy to feel less bad that like a leak comes out like this, if that makes sense. But
Well,
I
yeah,
guess we'll just have to.
yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you know someone treated something badly, you want to see the final product kind of fail. It's kind of like even we talked earlier the year with like Blizzard, and kind of they've had relatively poor working conditions as well, and probably in the past like 2 or 3 years as well. And how they treated the current situation with the Warcraft 3 Reforged, obviously the pro Hong Kong stuff. It's just one of those things where you want to see Blizzard fail. Like I love Blizzard, and I love a lot of their games and their IPs, but there is something in me where I'm like, I'm kind of glad that Warcraft 3 Reforged failed, because I love the game so much and you completely screwed it over.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Look, in the end, I think this game will probably sell well. I don't have
Yeah,
mm,
like I don't know. As I mentioned before, it's gonna succeed. I don't know, like you don't know the repercussions or impact of this leak until it kind of maybe comes out, and maybe you can kind of speculate.
yeah. I think yeah, like that's definitely. But yeah, I hope there's gonna be uh I hope it's good. I hope the thing is like this just they kind of look at this and they're like, oh, you know what, you're wrong. Like it is actually a good game, and all the changes that they made, it was purposeful and it did have an overall function, and the studio was correct to make the move.
Yeah, but
But
that's the thing. I know the professional critics will always give it 10 out of 10 no matter what, because yeah, you can't really trust them. It just depends on the audience, I guess, the audience and how they feel. I feel for this
yeah,
particular
but
game.
yeah, I just look. I just hope for the game's sake and the studio's sake that they end up being correct in the decisions they make. Whether they are or not is a completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we'll go through some of the stuff that we've been doing and playing. I've so this is actually technically something I've been putting off. So I mentioned this game. So Bloodstain Ritual of the Night. It's I guess it's a spiritual successor to the Castlevania um, games that kind of have been put into storage, but there is a little bit of whispers about new games coming out for these, given the popularity of like some of the Netflix TV series and just like the fact that I guess Konami just doesn't do anything with their franchises, but maybe they might do something new with it. That's the kind of whispers. But Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is a Kickstarter started game that was funded by fans for fans, successfully met its goals and ended up being really, really good. Like alongside, there's a lot of like failures on Kickstarter, but the one of the big games that come to mind that did really well was Shovel Knight, and this is another one that comes to mind that did really well. Like, do you know any other one? Like Ukulele, I guess did well in like
Well,
A
that's it.
Hat in
Ukulele was
Time.
okay. I think everyone always looks at what is it? Mighty Number Nine was pretty bad though. But
Oh
like,
yeah, that one
and
was.
yeah, I think there's been a few successes where there's been like the Shovel Knight was good. But yeah, I think it's just been yeah. I think it's still a good tool out there that people have for different projects.
Hmm. And so Bloodstain is supposed to be this spiritual successor, is made by I think like the original creator, right?
It's not Hideki Kamiya, it's the other one. I forgot.
Igarashi, I think.
Yogi Rush. Yeah.
Yeah. So and yeah, I think this game it bleeds Castlevania. Like if you like those games, this is exactly what it is. The mechanics are like very similar. It's like a 2D scrolling. Like it uses like the 3D like art like modeling, but like I prefer like the sprite work, but I'm just I grew up with that, so that's why I enjoy it. But like the 3D stuff isn't bad, and the story's like pretty good. Like it's like, would you say it's kind of generic, but it does like it's like good generic.
It's like
If that
generic
makes
fantasy, but it's like it I think it just it delivers a purpose. Like I feel like a lot of these
Mhm.
games, no one's 100% really playing it for the story. Like
Story purpose,
it's
yeah,
just a good backdrop for
yeah.
interesting plot lines to happen and bosses and yeah, the
Mhm.
gameplay to happen.
Yeah, the gameplay is really cool. Like so essentially like to marry him, there's like these demons that were like kind of spilled out into the land, and she's a shard binder who is essentially a human who's able to control the souls of demons in the form of these demon shards that go into her body. And when she's able to control them, she's able to essentially manifest powers that are derived from these demons. So if there's like a character like a demon that's able to like shoot fire out of their mouths or something, she's able to like shoot fire out of their hands. And as you collect like more of these souls, they become more powerful, and you've got like upgrading system. You've got like you just have like this really intricate crafting system, and it can be as deep as you want it or as simplistic as you want it. I haven't done all the crafting stuff. I probably won't be. Like I beat like the final boss and I feel very, very satisfied. But then even that, they still have like a speed mode. They have like a boss rush mode. They have like a mode where you play as like one of the other titular characters in the game. And you can play it as that character. It's like again, there's a lot to get out of this game.
Yeah,
And
if you wanted 100% it, there is quite a lot, and it's one of those things as well where I think it tells you the percentage of the map that you've seen as well.
mhm,
So it is one of those things where it's like if you want to clear out every single room,
mhm.
it's pretty damn expansive because like yeah, and even then I think the original game like the storyline is pretty packed and it's got a lot of
Yeah,
stuff
it is.
in there to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of twists and turns. A lot of the powers are very like relevant too. Like, and everybody I think we've both played this game very differently, and we both had different experiences with different bosses, and how we handled them. And there's like no like incorrect way. Like if you're able to beat the boss, that's all that. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's all about like using the different systems that are in place. Like like my favorite like kind of ability was like like you have like these books, these like sorry, these portraits that float around you, that do like a bunch of damage, and if you use that, like you can basically blast have like passive damage that you do to like bosses or just general enemies, and it really helps you out of a bunch.
Hmm.
Whereas like I know other people that played and they were like, oh yeah, I just use like the bow and arrow dude for ages, and
Yeah,
that got me
yeah.
through like all the bosses.
I like what I did is because you have three different types, so you've got kind of like a semi like summon ability, which is kind of like the book thing that you or the portrait thing that you were mentioning. Then you've got one where it's kind of like a kind of a
A
semi ability,
directional,
a directional
yeah.
ability, and then I think I forgot the other one, but it's kind of like a normal
It's like a
arrow.
passive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a passive, and I remember. What I did for the directional one had this big drill blade thing, and I
Oh
upgraded
yeah,
that to
yeah.
pretty much the max, and that does a shitload of damage in a fast amount of
Mm-hmm.
time. And then
Drill's
for
pretty good.
yeah, but that's the thing. But for some of the bosses, if I found them too hard, I actually switched to the directional ability of just the shields because
Yeah, yeah.
that shield literally blocked pretty much 95% of every single attack, even if it was from a boss. So if I knew I was gonna get hit and I didn't want to learn the pattern that well, I'm just like okay, directional block. Like so, there's a lot of stuff as you mentioned before where it's like you can really customize your gameplay and how you tackle every single boss. So long as obviously you find you kill the right monsters and then you obviously level up your
Collect the
stuff.
souls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, shards. Souls are from Castlevania. Can't mix them. They're completely different games. I swear. But yeah, it's a really excellent game. It follows the like Castlevania, Metroidvania style of games. It's really cool. It's on PC. It's on everything: Switch, PS4, Xbox, all that kind of jazz. Yeah, it's really good, and I think more support of this game may mean that it might get a sequel in the future, which I think is pretty cool. Like if we get support, so yeah, so Bloodstain Ritual of the Night, get on it. What have you been doing?
Yeah, I've been watching a few things. I've been
Okay.
playing a few things, but I'm just gonna wait until I finally fully get like a good kind of understand what's going on.
Hmm.
But essentially, I've just been watching. I've watched two films. Just been like, oh yeah, this seems something quite interesting. And the movie that I watched is called Journey to China: The Mystery of the Iron Mask, and um, I think it's just abbreviated the Iron Mask. I remember hearing about this film probably about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it was kind of one of those films that kind of were in development hell because I remember hearing about it for a very long time. Um, and then it finally got released out of nowhere. Because this film's a Chinese Russian developed film. Um, but it, but the main reason why I watched it and the main reason why this movie has any attention, I'm pretty sure, is because of the two stars in this is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan. What a
Mm.
team! What a team up! Like the only time you've ever seen that is Around the World in 80 Days, and that was like for like 5 minutes. So to have
Look,
two personalities together, it's like awesome, right?
oh yeah, for sure. Because originally I was like thinking Iron Mask, like what is this movie? But then eventually like it kind of came to me. It's like, oh yeah, this is a movie with Arnie and Jackie Chan. Like I said it before you even told me because it sounded so familiar to me. But yeah, like look, to be fair, we haven't had a movie like this since like the 90s. You know,
Yeah, you don't really
for
get it
me,
like
I'm sure it
Shanghai Noon
happened.
and Shanghai Nights, and that still has
Yeah,
Jackie
like
Chan in it.
Rush Hour.
We need
Or
some more body cup stuff. I think it's
Body
like it,
Cop. I don't
yeah.
I don't know what to really call it. It's like these like celebrity personality mishmash movies, right? Like Odd Couple. That's what it's called. Right? Odd
Mm.
Couple movies.
Yeah,
Um,
where they just get like I don't know the hard and brute guy, and then you've got like the funny guy, and it's
yeah,
like
yeah, the straight man with the funny man.
it is formulaic, but it's kind of like it's but it works so well. It's kind of like it reminds me of what was it what was that movie with The Rock, and he was a CIA agent, and it was like The Rock and someone else. I forgot what that
Oh, yeah, yeah, with
was. It Kevin Hart?
the short, yeah, Kevin Hart. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
What it
like basically those types of films.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But essentially, this film, in general, like obviously, the Arnie and Jackie are not in the full 100% of the movie. There actually are main characters that aren't them. Um, Clearly they use them for marketing materials and to get people in the audience, like me, for example. Like pretty much probably I think 95% of people. But I am fine with that. They find really good. They're very good. I guess like background characters in a sense, but they still have starring roles and they still have moments. Like pretty much the first 40 minutes is just with those two characters. So I think that's a good amount of screen time. Um,
Mm.
the main character kind of focuses around. Actually, the funny thing about this movie is I didn't know until I researched it. This is actually a sequel film. Uh, so I'm
A
like,
sequel.
this is a sequel film, and the
Huh.
original did not have Jackie Chan in it. I
Oh
think the
well.
original
Okay.
one's called V1 or V something.
Okay.
I'm trying to look it up here. Essentially, yeah, it's a different yeah, and that was like a Chinese release film as well. And then I think they just upped up the budget and they just like get Jackie Chan and Arnie into this film. But essentially, it's set in the like 1700s, where it follows this cartographer from I guess the last movie, and he's trying to map out I guess China, but he finds that kind of this girl who's in trouble, and she has kind of this treasure that kind of awakens the dragon, quote unquote, and then everyone's after her, as well as this. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film. So you've got the princess, you've got the Russian cartographer, you got Jackie Chan in a prison that he needs to fight out of, which Arnie is the I guess the general of, and then you've got this Russian royalty guy who's also locked up with Jackie Chan, but he escapes and then also helps the princess to reclaim her throne. So there's a lot of like plot points going on around here, and a lot of different characters,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, indeed.
it's absolutely bonkers on how it does it. This movie is one of those things where it's so bad that it's kind of good, but it's like entertaining to watch. Like there's just so much random stuff, and also the special effects are quite well done as well. Because there are parts with like a dragon, you know, as they mentioned.
Mhm.
Obviously the fight work in the fight workings with Jackie Chan, it's quite well done as well. There's a lot of like because obviously Jackie Chan is probably the master at like not only comedic action, but also prop action. So you know, since he's in a prison, he has the kind of like, this chain but binds his like arms and things like that. So there's a lot of cool like hijinks of him getting caught around scenery, or like Arnie just yanking down the chain with his pure muscle to fight Jackie. There's a lot of cool elements like that. So I think that the fight choreography, pretty much for all the movies, are pretty damn good. But yeah, I think the main thing is like this movie's just absolutely balls to the wall, really crazy. You don't take it seriously, and you just have a lot of fun with it. Because it's like, I think even there's a lot of things like, for example, Arnie, he hams it up. Like, I think he understands and knows what this film is. This is like his what is it, twins days, or like his Kindergarten Cop. Like, I think he knows what type of film this is, and he just goes with it. And you know, it's also good to see him act again. I haven't seen him act in a very long, well, Terminator, but I feel like he didn't really act in that. But yeah.
No.
Yeah, you know. But either way, I really enjoy the film. They do some cool elements of like around the end. There is a bit where, you know, the princess comes to one of the towns, and you know, there's this, I guess, sorceress that can steal people's faces, and she stole the princess's I guess face. And you know, the townspeople are just like, yeah, you're taxing us too much. You know, you're not doing anything. So then she, you know, the real princess comes back and liberates everyone, and you know, helps to fight for the good cause. Very generic, I know, but it's like it's just really entertaining and very interesting. It's like even the acting is quite interesting as well, and they get some good character. As I mentioned, they got good talent as well, because not only do they have Jackie and Arnie, they also have Charles Dance. You know, I forgot his name in Game of Thrones. But it's the dad. Which, yeah, so they got Tywin Lannister to be in this film as well, which is quite interesting. Wow. And yeah, and yeah, they do these cool things where they've also shown, like, you know, the townspeople. They have to fight against these bodyguards that are mystical. Like, it looks like they have superpowers. So one guy kind of looks like Raiden, and he has like lightning coming out from his fingers. You've got a guy who has this like kind of like ability where he screams. Everyone, you know, can't hear anything properly. And they play on these kind of things, like the interesting concepts of that. But it's also so not only is it a Chinese kung fu movie, it is also a pirate movie, and there are parts of this where they're on a pirate ship, and it feels like Pirates of the Caribbean in such a weird way as well. And they go through this island. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is this movie goes everywhere. And
yeah, I was gonna say,
like, it doesn't have a necessary genre per se, or like a thing that it stays on for too long. But
okay,
yeah, but I overall I enjoyed it, and I think, to me, if I was going to do a deep analysis of it and really understand what this film is, to me, this is kind of like a modern equivalent to Big Trouble in Little China. I feel like it knows what it is, and it's very schlocky, very hammy, very out there, but it's interesting to watch, even if it's kind of like, you could quote unquote say it's bad. So that's kind of my review of The Iron Mask, which is such a weird movie. And my final movie that I did watch is the Jay and Silent Bob film, the reboot. So there's one of those, you know, it depends on Kevin Smith. You either love him or you hate him. You like Clerks or Mallrats or you know, basically the rest of his stuff. And yeah, I think this is a comparable film. It kind of follows the you know, Jay and Silent Bob. They kind of signed out their rights to the you know, their likeness to a studio, and the whole plot is them trying to stop the studio to make their movie being made, which essentially is the plot of the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back's film that came out in 2001, but it's a reboot. So it's kind of very much a very funny play on words. And it is very Kevin Smithy. So as I mentioned before, if you don't like stuff like Clerks or like random quips or like out there stuff, then you probably won't like this film. But as a fan of like all the rest of his films, I really enjoyed it, because pretty much a lot of people from his older films come back. You know, they get Ben Affleck, they get Matt Damon to come back. You know, you get all the Jason Biggs to come back. All these people that were big in like the late 90s to come back for these kind of roles. And it's pretty much a memory lane movie almost, where you see all these people, like, you know, Ben Affleck was in Chasing Amy, and it's kind of like this follow-up of like, is Ben Affleck in real life playing himself? So it's kind of this very meta thing, but I pretty much enjoyed it. But there's, you know, it's first and foremost a comedy film, but it does have some glorified cameos, like as I mentioned before, and they basically just, you know, to me, it's just crazy hijinks. It is a stoner comedy after all. So then you find Jay has a daughter, um, and that's actually what do you call it? Kevin Smith's actual real life daughter. And they do a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
yeah, and they do her name's Harley Quinn Smith because he likes comic books, obviously. Um,
Huh.
and
Hmm.
and and and, and they even pull a line. It's like, oh, is that because they do a bit to stop Kevin Smith making the reboot of the Jay and Silent Bob film. So it's also a poking fun of Kevin Smith, where they, for example, the whole plot is for them to go to Comic Con, which is their version of Comic Con, which is the Jay and Silent Bob um, Comic Con, and they just be like, yeah, we're gonna stop this convention happening, and we're gonna stop this movie getting happening. So there's a lot of meta commentary of like, they show James Vanderbeek playing Jay, and Jason Biggs playing Silent Bob, and then we're just like, you know what, this reboot's getting directed by Kevin Smith, what a hack. So there's a lot of random, I guess, elements that you could say that if you're in the know of, I guess, his stuff, it is kind of fun. It
Hmm.
I would say to watch like maybe the rest of his films and kind of get a sense of his style before even jumping into this film. But as someone who likes yeah, I guess his filmography, I think it's a pretty good, damn good film, and it is pretty funny at times. Um, and they do stuff quite interesting as well. It is very cheesy because Kevin Smith, I think his style recently has just been like, I want to make movies for me. He made Yoga Hoses, which is just this weird film. Even something like Tusk, he makes. So overall, um, I think if you're a fan of the Jay and Silent Bob series, if you're a fan of Kevin Smith's work, you'll love this film. If you don't know any of his films, I'd suggest starting at Dogma, which I think is probably his best work, and then moving on to like Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob, and a few of his other films. Have you watched any of these films at all?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. Like all these films, like I tend to put into this category of films that like I kind of don't have too much of like a personal interest in, but it's not necessarily that like I'm against watching them, if that makes sense. Like another one that comes to mind is um there's like Jay and Silent Bob. What's the one with like Keanu Reeves as like a reboot coming out? Not a reboot, sequel. Kanye, it's not Kanye West. Keanu Reeves. Keanu
Matrix.
Reeves. Not Matrix. It's like they're like in an I see now. I
It's
got
not
it. It's like
Speed.
one of his. No. It's like when he was young.
Point Break.
No, not that. But essentially like it's like not Dude, Where's My. What? I have to look this up
Oh
because
yeah, Bill and Ted. That's what you mean.
Bill and Ted, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Bill
that's
and
like,
Ted.
I have an attachment to Bill and Ted. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can definitely tell. Let's see what else. Um, oh, there's like Mike. There was like a Mike Myers. I think Mike Myers. Like kind of show as well. Like, uh,
What, Dumb and Dumber?
excellent. No.
Oh yeah, Wayne's World. Yeah.
Wayne's World. These kind of films all fall under the same category for me. Because they all have like a very similar kind of like like I don't know humor. I don't know about humor, because not necessarily the humor is bad, but it's just like the way that like the plot or you see, I put it into the category of like stoner film
Mhm.
because I know a lot of people who are like stoners who love. I'm not calling you a stoner, but I'm saying
Mm.
I'm saying like I know that there's these demographic of films and they don't really appeal to me too much. So I haven't watched it. Not to say that I wouldn't enjoy it. I might enjoy them. Who knows? Like I like things that do like meta commentary on stuff. But like yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I tried to watch like some of these films and they just don't appeal to me.
Mm. Yeah, I
But now
think
that I
yeah.
have all this free time, like maybe I can watch.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think for people like you, I think start with Dogma because I think that one's probably the most narrative driven one, and as I mentioned before, it's
Sure.
probably his best work. It's got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon who actually who exiled angels, and they just basically want to kind of like you basically take over the world and basically become demons. So it kind of has like a through line. But something like Mallrats, for example, you basically just got a bunch of people hanging out at a mall, and kind of the story unfolds during the mall where it's like a guy just wants to get his love of his life back, and then you've got Jason Lee basically just being like, I love the mall, it's cool to hang around with, and then all these events happen around this area. but like Dogma has like a particular purpose or a particular through line where it's not events happening to these characters in a situation. It's more like there's more urgency in Dogma. I guess what I'm trying to say. So I think for Dogma, I think it's more a through line. But yeah, for something like, I don't know, Clerks 2, that's all basically based in people working at a fast food place, and they're just talking shit. That's basically Clerks 2, and Clerks 1 is in a convenience store. So like you can see that there's kind of elements of like not much random stuff going on. And I think the original Jay and Silent Bob film is just like the reason why the reboot works so well, I think, is because the original Jay and Silent Bob film.
I think your mic is sounding a bit low, my dude. Just nothing wrong with some technical, just boomering it up a little bit. But I was gonna say with the whole there's a lot of you see like Clerks. That's like another like movie that I haven't seen, but like is up there with like what people recommend. Oh, you got to watch Clerks. Morats was another one that you mentioned too. So I don't know. I think it really comes down to me actually like committing to these movies and actually watching them properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as I was saying before, it's like it's just
yeah,
the Jalen
let's see.
Yeah.
I is it? I wonder. Oh, Scream 3. Oh wait, no. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
But yeah,
feel free to weigh in.
Yeah. But basically, what I was saying is, the main reason why the Jay and Silent Bob films, I guess, work so well for me.
Having some difficulties on our end.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
okay. I'm back. Yeah. No, so essentially, what I was trying to say without the technical difficulties is the main reason why I guess the Jay and Silent Bob film works so well. And as a reboot is because the original was set in 2001, and essentially that was the early days of the internet. So then you have Ben Affleck's character talking about how Hollywood is corrupt, and they base everything based on comic books, which is really funny because it basically kind of happened. As well as they talk about internet chat rooms and forums. So then it kind of moves it into a modern age of like everyone being connected and everyone has a voice on YouTube. So I found that in general to be interesting. But yeah, as you were saying before, it's just one of those types of interesting, like those types of movies,
quirky movies that like have a pretty interesting take on things. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, at least watch Dogma. At least watch Dogma. I think that's probably the best one.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been watching. And yeah, that's gonna be us for this week. So remember, you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and our YouTube channel, Marketing Movies, where we do stream. I gotta say thank you once again for making 100 episodes possible. It's really cool to have that. Yeah, especially for what we're talking about. But yeah, until next time, maybe Henry Cavill can be on our 300th episode. Until next time, see you guys.
Catch you later.